So hello everyone, welcome to the Gold Coast and welcome to Unreal Fest. I'm honored to be here and excited to have the opportunity to share what we are working on. My name is Daiki Terauchi, and I work as a software engineer in developer relations at Epic Games Japan. My main role is supporting our partners who wish to integrate with Epic's online features, such as the Epic Game Store or Epic Online Services. I focus on boosting their productivity from both technical and operational perspectives. Today, I would like to share some tips and tricks that will improve your efficiency while working with EOS and EGS, and so on. So let's start from the Epic's history and what has brought us to here. From the beginning, Epic has adhered to a core principle, sharing the tools we developed for our own project with others. This philosophy is integral to our identity. It allows us to enhance our products and helps others leverage our experience to address similar challenges in their games, thereby accelerating their development. For instance, Unreal Engine originated from Unreal. So over the years, as we've grown and expanded, we've remained committed to this approach. What started with Unreal Engine has evolved into a comprehensive suite of tools that span various disciplines and industries, all aimed at fostering creativity. Epic Games is not only a game studio, but also a tools company dedicated to maximizing creators' productivity. With the launch of the Epic Games Store in 2018 and our suite of services, we support the growth and success of creators. We believe the phrase, "We succeed when you succeed." So whether you are new to Epic or a long-term user of our products, we are excited to welcome you to our community and appreciate you joining us on this journey. Okay, so let's move on to the main topic of this presentation. Let me start from an introduction to Epic Online Services. Epic Online Services offers a free, open, and modular suite of backend services that covers a wide range of core functionalities necessary for powering the backend of the game. These services are based on the matchmaking and cross-platform features we developed for Fortnite and are now available for any developers to use. As I mentioned earlier, the main goal is to share our knowledge and help you address similar challenges in your own games. The concept here is that you have access to a suite of common services which have already been tested and proven to work at scale with a Fortnite size. So you can integrate these services into your own games. This ideally helps streamline and simplify parts of your development process, allowing you to spend less time on ensuring features like matchmaking work and more time focusing on your core game loop. And the best part is, all of this is available for free. Why? So, because we truly believe in connecting players, growing communities, and working with our partners. It builds a larger and better ecosystem for everyone. So the Palworld, released in this beginning of this year on Steam, was a great example of this. Palworld is a game developed by a small team, but it suddenly achieved unbelievable sales and continued to surpass CCU expectations every day. And although there were challenging moments, the experience of working together with them to provide backend services while watching the number of CCU increases in real time was incredibly exciting and unlike anything I had experienced before. At its peak, the game reached millions of CCU, and our backend system was stressed. And the EOS performance was a bit degraded, and I also stressed too. But we've updated the backend system immediately, and after that, EOS backend system operated without any issue, proving its ability to handle such a massive scale of load. Okay, so let's dive into the details. EOS is grouped into roughly two major buckets, game services and account services. These services are designed with the key functionalities in mind that you likely consider when planning your games. How can we support multiplayer? What can we do to moderate player behavior? And how do we enable players to have quick social connections within the game? These are the kind of areas we aim to support through EOS. On the left, game services provides core functionalities that will be used in network game, things like matchmaking, voice chat, and so on. And there's also some player moderation features too. One thing to note here is that you have control on any of the player data that is generated under game services, not us. We process the data, but you own the data and how it's used. On the right, account services provide social features with Epic accounts, like secure authentication, friends management, invite system, social overlay, and rich presence for building communities and connections. On the bottom, there also are call-out for Epic Games Store services. The EOS SDK includes functionality to interact with the Epic Games Store if you choose to distribute your game there. This service provides store-related functions like ownership verification, in-app purchase, and entitlement redemption. Finally, I also wanted to mention Kids Web Service. Using Kids Web Service enables you to leverage the world-class functionality we use in our games and experience to manage youth audiences safely. You can use it to do parent verification, consent management, or adult verification in general to ensure your experiences are enjoyed by the right audiences. KWS functionality is not included in the Epic Online Services SDK, but it's an important piece of our developer services offering. So with everything we offer, EOS is also choice. It was built with modularity in mind, so you can pick and choose the services you want based on the requirements of your game. Do you want to integrate a voice chat, or you want an anti-cheat solution, or you want a central account system to manage players? In any cases, don't build it yourself when you have something already proven that can work for you. Pick and choose what you need. Also, EOS has built-in integration with well-known identity providers such as Xbox, PlayStation, Steam, and of course, Epic accounts. You can use any account system that supports the OpenID protocol. We treat them all the same and should be largely transparent to players. It's just your game backend at work. EOS is also platform agnostic, so you can use it on PC, mobile, or consoles. This gives you common cross-platform tooling you can use to build your game, with the ability to also hook into native platforms SDKs as well. Common tooling leads to delivering a common experience to all players. Another point I'd like to mention is that EOS is not tied to any specific engine. The SDK is supported in C and C# with plugins available for major engines. Of course, we have the EOS Online subsystem for Unreal Engine, as well as plugins for Unity, and some community-developed integrations that you can consider. So Game Maker Engine posted a blog about their EOS SDK plugin and showcased a few titles that were leveraging it. So you can choose any engine based on your requirements. And you do not need to use UE to take advantage of EOS, nor are you required to use EOS if you are using UE. Okay, so let's summarize. Epic Online Services is a flexible cross-platform multi-engine SDK that can be integrated with your existing workflow and game engines. EOS is platform agnostic, creating a common backend for your game. This makes it easier for you to ship on any platform or storefront, expanding your reach to a wider audiences. And you are in control of your game and player data and how it's used. The goal is to help you focus on creating unique experiences while simplifying implementation. EOS handles the technical aspects for you, and it has already been proven effective. And you can use it to get valuable insight into your game operations. And lastly, It's built in a modular way, so you can pick what you need. So as I showed, EOS is a suite of tools consist with various functions that are required for development of an online game. But this also means there are many potential pitfalls during development. Since the implementation details can vary for each game, we don't delve deeply into technical specifics this time. Instead, I'd like to share some tips and key points to help you effectively use EOS and accelerate your development. The first part is about our developer portal. The developer portal is a website where developers manage resources related to EOS. As at the top level, there's an organization under which you can create one or more products that represent your game. And each product can have multiple sandboxes, and each sandboxes can have multiple deployments. So sandboxes are primarily used when selling your game through our store, as game binaries and store resources are managed on a sandbox basis. Even if you are not using our store, sandboxes are still necessary because some configuration like connection settings for external authentication systems are managed per sandbox. On the other hand, deployments are just a kind of bucket where EOS data is. Deployment sandboxes and products each have their own ID, and you just need to configure these in the SDK. But understanding this hierarchy is helpful to think about your deployment environment. Along with deployments and sandboxes, which are likely buckets of data, you also need to set up clients to actually use EOS from your game. Clients basically define your permissions, like what your client can do on the player's PC or on the server side, and so on. By defining clients, you can configure which resources your game has access to, such as requesting a friends list, checking achievements, joining a session, and more. And lastly, if you are using Epic accounts, you will also need to set up the actual Epic accounts services configuration. So normally you would not encounter this on the other platforms, but since Epic account can be used everywhere, and there are certain permissions that a player needs to implicitly allow an application to access, such as the user's profile, presence, and friends list. Okay, so as I mentioned before, game services data is per deployment. If you don't want to mix up multiple versions of your game for matchmaking or lobby, you would use different deployments for testing each version. And if you'd like to test achievements without affecting the live environments, deployments can be very useful. You can create deployments as you need from the dev portal and make them either publicly accessible from the web or private only for your limited dev members. Just in case, you can create a private deployment under a private sandbox only. So I just talked about the visibility of deployments and sandboxes. Only organization members or accounts added to a player group has access to this private environment. So EOS is not only used by Epic accounts, so you can add any kind of accounts to this player group. There are options for adding users. You can use a web tool or import from CSV file. In both cases, you need to specify the account by ID, not the username. And there's one thing I have to mention, that you can add Epic accounts too to player groups, but using EOS with an Epic account requires logging in through Epic account services. So unverified Epic account services only accessible from the organization members, not the users from in the player groups. So don't forget to get the EOS brand settings verified before start testing, or you need to add testers to your organization. So the next tips is about store-related features. The EOS SDK offers two functions for checking what items a user has access to. One is sorry. The one is EOS Ecom query ownership, and the other is EOS Ecom query entitlements. These look similar at first glance, but are actually used in the different scenarios. Query ownership is used for durable items and has the ability to traverse the ownership hierarchy. The result of this API is a simple Boolean that represents whether a user owns that item or not. On the other hand, query entitlements is used for consumable items. You can think of it as a receipt of purchase. For example, if you buy a set of 3 in-game currency packs, the 3 unique entitlements will be granted to your account. So here's a scenario where I buy a game, base game on the store and check the ownership. In this simple case, both APIs work. With query ownership, you will get the true. That means a user owns the game. And with query entitlements, you will see the entitlements that includes the target item ID. But in this second scenario, things work a bit differently. So say I buy the deluxe edition of the game that includes the base game and the deluxe edition skin. In this case, a unique entitlement for the deluxe edition is generated and granted to my account. So query entitlement returns just a single entitlement for the deluxe edition only. So you would not see any entitlements associated with the deluxe edition skin or base game. However, query ownership traverses the store item hierarchy. So calling query ownership not only for the deluxe edition, but also for the base game and deluxe edition skin will return true for each. In summary, for checking the ownership or durable items, you should use query ownership. Then for checking consumable items, like in-game currency or in-game items, you should use query entitlements. The last thing in this part is setting your default sandbox and deployment. This isn't important if you are not planning to release on our store. However, by setting this up, the Epic Games launcher will know which deployments and sandbox ID should be passed to the game as a command line argument when launching it. In our publishing tool, you need to push the same binary from dev to stage and live environment. So the game needs to handle which IDs should be used for initializing the EOS SDK. Configuring this default makes it easier to manage which environment to connect to. Okay, so let's move on to part 2, authentication. I mentioned that EOS services are divided into 2 groups, account services and game services. The biggest difference between them is which account system is used for authentication. Account services require logging in with an Epic account. On the other hand, game services can be used with any external account system that supports the OpenID protocol. Of course, you can use an Epic account as an external account system if you want. I didn't mention about social overlay feature here, but it's part of Epic account services, so you need to log into Epic account if you'd like to use it. Then, one of the most frequently asked questions is about differences between the 2 authentication services that the EOS SDK provides. One is EOS Auth, which allows logging into Epic account and managing the linkage between Epic account and external accounts. In contrast, EOS Connect authenticates the user to access EOS game services. So to log into EOS, you need to call EOS Connect login by passing a token retrieved from an external account system that the player has logged into. This will return an associated product user ID, known as PUID, which is the primary ID for EOS game services. It's also worth mentioning that EOS Connect treats EOS Auth login the same as other platform account systems. If you have linked to your Epic account through Auth APIs, it has no impact on Connect account linking. In other words, just because you link to your Xbox account to your Epic account using Auth API, if you log into EOS Connect with your Epic account, EOS Connect knows nothing about your Xbox account unless you also log in or link it using Connect APIs. So the Connect login and auth login is a completely separate concept. So here are some best practices we advise about authentication, especially for titles wanting to support crossplay or offer EAS account login on other platforms. This is more about a design consideration rather than technical advice. First, if you do not require Epic accounts at game launch, like releasing on Steam, so it is best to make this a configurable setting within the game, likely tied to a private boolean. So we often see the games attempting to log in the player at launch, causing sudden prompts for Epic account permissions, which can confuse players. Why an Epic account is required to play my game on Steam? So instead, we recommend that the first time a player launches the game, the login to Epic Boolean is set to false. So when the player chooses to enable this functionality, set it to true and triggers authentication flow at that moment. For subsequent launches of the game, login automatically since the Boolean has been set to true. So our Bootstrapper supports these use cases by providing the ability to dynamically load EOS services. So we recommend linking the external account with the Epic account, enabling silent login going forward by taking, for example, the Steam app ticket and using it to log into the Epic account. But what you don't want to do is make this your primary login logic. So sometimes titles will have their launch logic be attempts to log into the Epic account with the Steam credentials, and if logging is successful, it means the player opted in. This may not always be true. Maybe a player had an Epic account, maybe a player had linked the two accounts previously and forgot, and so now they are assuming this game requires Epic accounts to play, and say, why is the Steam game requires an Epic account? So that feels bad. This is why we recommend using settings to manage this. So link accounts, yes, but make sure login is still an opt-in or player's choice in your game. And when you are integrating with the Epic Game Store, part of the flow is that the Epic launcher will pass you exchange code as a token to identify the user. So you can use this to automatically sign in the existing user. From time to time, I see titles that uses the username password login on Epic Game Store, but which is odd since you already have an authenticated user, so silent automatic login is always a better experience. And finally, consider your access scopes as I've discussed previously. So next topic is EOS Connect. Firstly, one thing that is commonly overlooked, the EOS backend has a 1-hour token limit. So afterwards it expires. Make sure you are refreshing that authentication by hooking up the callback. And otherwise, you will be logged out from the game services and operations will fail. So now the second point is a bit complicated one. When you sign into an EOS backend using EOS Connect, you take an authenticated user, and for the first time you logged in, create a new PUID to associate it with that user. It's platform agnostic, and you can associate multiple external accounts with the same PUID. And one thing you want to be aware of is that concept. A common issue I see is that last two bullet points, where a player logs into a game on Steam with their Steam ID, a new PUID is created for the user, then either connects their Epic account or logs in on other platform with the Epic account. That causes a separate identity is created. Now the backend has two IDs to associate with the same player. That is the issue. So you need to think about this flow and decide how to handle it for supporting cross-platform. You need to check if there is already an ID associated with that Epic account. If so, we need to merge the account. If there isn't an associated ID, just have a default, say the Epic this time, make Epic default to be the primary PUID and link the other platform identities to it, so that you are always sending invites and passing data to a single entity. So we just talked about crossplay, so let's dive into more details. When it comes to crossplay, it's important to know what if you are planning to release your game on the Epic Game Store. Crossplay between PC storefronts is a requirement. You don't have to use EOS or Epic accounts to fulfill this, but we believe they are quite effective for this purpose. Currently, any multiplayer game on both EGS and other PC storefronts supports crossplay, which you can look at as an example. What's particularly exciting is that most developers choose to use EOS for this, indicating its reliability. We've seen many companies releasing their second or third games with EOS as their default choice, or opting for it to enable crossplay with consoles, which is great to see. Let's talk about the best practices that I've learned. First, we do require that if you have direct friend-to-friend invite support within the platform, similarly supported invites should be supported cross-platform too. What doesn't work in this case is having direct invites for same platform friends, but then using invite lobby codes for cross-platform friends. If you are going to access to the other social graph, view and send invites everywhere. Another issue we see is fragmenting matchmaking by default, but allowing players to opt in to crossplay, which results in a smaller potential pool as the default experience. While I recognize the concern about consoles versus PC crossplay, especially in genres like shooters, but we require PC matchmaking to be shared by default to provide the best and the widest experience from the start. Ideally, you would want that as well. So finally, we don't want to force players to install or use the store. The overlay tech and other features are available through a redistributable that can be bundled with your game. Okay, so let's check out some examples of crossplay implementation from existing games. Speedball from Double Stallion, Midnight Ghost Hunt from Vaulted Sky Games, and Remnant 2 from Gunfire. Here's one example from Speedball. In the login home screen, the Epic account is just part of the profile view, and choosing Link Epic Games account leads a player to our login flow, which I will show shortly to give you an idea of walkthrough. In Midnight Ghost Hunt, it's hard to see, but they actually do it from a setting menu, so it's really just an option settings to enable cross-platform invites and log into an Epic account. So they released this on Steam. So the point is to make it clear that logging into an additional account is an explicit action, and it's something they can enable and disable from the settings. The final one is Remnant 2, and this is the one I wanted to highlight. It's a bit hard to see, but you can see the Link Epic account button on the top left. You may notice that this is actually coming from PlayStation. So while the title was shipped last year, this February they added console crossplay support. So this is a third-party title using EOS and EAS to support crossplay between all platforms. Players are really excited about this, so I'll walk through the PlayStation experience as an example of what the login experience will be. The actual flow is the same or very similar on all platforms if a player chooses to log in. So you just click a button and you say you want to log in, you want to link your Epic account. So this is the screen for the linking flow. This player doesn't have an existing connection, so it's going to prompt them with something like, we don't recognize this PlayStation ID, so do you have an Epic Games account? Please log in, or you can create it. We support both flows, create or login, so it's automated as much as possible to provide a nice and smooth experience for the player. Once the process is handled correctly and the user either links or creates an account, the consent flow we talked about before will be shown. All of this happens in-game, so you can complete the entire process on PlayStation using our overlay system. Then the player grant consent. You'll see a toast notification on top right. It's a little bit hard to see, but that indicating that you can access the overlay. So that means you have logged in. Great. So we've talked about the login flow. Then let's talk about how to deal with friends list in cross-platform. There are two major categories that I see with this. So Speedworld took the approach of handling things through in-game UI. In this case, they showed the buttons invite Steam friends and invite Epic Games friends. How to handle the events from kind of these buttons is up to you. You could have this load the respective overlay, or you could have it load a local list. Sometimes titles will take the approach of doing an in-game UI where they consolidate everything into a single display. In Speedball case, each button opens either Steam or Epic's overlay to send an invitation to your friends. So if you take the overlay approach, like Midnight Gotham, you can see how they integrated with the Steam ecosystem. This allows you to see both Steam friends and Epic friends on the same consolidated overlay view. And you can send Steam invites to Steam friends and Epic invites to Epic friends from here. So you need to set up to integrated platform config in EOS SDK to show this consolidated view. And again, so here is the console experience from Remnant 2. So if you had friends, they would be here, but sorry, this program doesn't have. Okay, so we've finished a really big part about EOS. So now let's focus on more specific services like the player moderation services. So Agent Cheat is another free service provided as part of the EOS suite. It's primarily targeted towards online shooters and competitive action games, but can be useful in a number of different genres. In particular, EAC provides integrity protection for both games installations and process memory when the game is running, detecting attempts to modify user. One thing worth mentioning is that EAC is not the solution for offline games. It's outside the scope of our service to guarantee the security of a title running on the machine over which the actual player has total control. So servers under your management can be trusted, but player's machine cannot. And cheating is no longer just for amateur hackers, so it's now a multi-billion-dollar industry with companies and professional developers dedicated to bypassing game protection and giving their customers a pay-to-win advantage. Some cheats even offer subscription services. So EAC uses a module system, which means you can download and activate new cheat detection by staying on the latest module. This allows the game clients to download and install a new module without needing to update your game binary. However, you need to enable this on developer portal. We also recommend integrating anti-cheat in your early development cycle. Use it in your testing and open betas and try to break your own game in early cycle. So we see too many developers who are almost ready to ship and then add EAC as an afterthought. Honest and fair players are your eyes and ears. Player reports are an essential part of any multiplayer game, and reporting features are built into the EOS SDK. So additionally, player reports can do things that anti-cheat cannot. For example, if your game engine allows a player to cheat by creeping their way into the environment and hiding, this isn't actually a cheat. So it's allowed by your game, and EAC will not detect it as an active cheating method. But if you implemented player reports, that player reports can bring this kind of game feature to your attention so that you can fix it. The developer portal provides a clear and easy to understand dashboard and analytics for your game support team or GMs to be able to identify cheat activity and, if required, apply sanctions to players who are ruining the fun of the rest of the community. And finally, don't assume ESE will solve all your problems. No one-cheat solution is a silver bullet. Try to think like a cheat maker when designing your games. On this slide, we provide a few ideas that makes your game particularly vulnerable, but there are plenty more. Take steps to harden your game by design, and at the very least, you will slow down the ability of the cheat industry to analyze your title for exploits during the critical launch window when good PR is so important. So far, I have been talking about EOS and its tips and tricks, but since this is UE Fest, I would also like to talk about its integration with UE. So EOS offers an SDK that is conceptually independent from UE. However, for integration purposes, Epic provides the online subsystem plugins. Online subsystem is provided as a UE plugin, providing unified interface that absorbs the differences in network functionalities across various platforms. By simply switching the OSS settings used, games can be made to work on any platform without modifying the network code. As described in this picture, games only need to interact with the standardized interface provided by OSS, and the actual OSS specified in the ini file will provide the appropriate processing tailored to the platform on which the game is running. The process of installing the online subsystem EOS is very simple. You simply enable the online subsystem EOS from the plugin settings in the editor and restart. Then, by adding online subsystem and online subsystem utils to the list of dependency modules in the build.cs file of each project, it becomes available for use in C++ code. In the ini file, in addition to toggling plugins on or off, it is necessary to configure the network driver that will be used. By setting up the network driver provided by online subsystem EOS to be used for the sockets during P2P communication, the game can utilize EOS's P2P service for communication without any additional implementation effort on the game side. Okay, so up to this point, I have been discussing scenarios that primarily involve using EOS on PCs. However, as previously mentioned, EOS is also accessible from other platforms, including consoles. Particularly with consoles, there may be some requirements like displaying session information and presence information on each platform's network services. Even in such cases, it is possible to address these requirements by using OSS EOS in conjunction with the OSS specific to each platform. So firstly, it is possible to enable multiple OSSs by specifying EOS Plus for default platform service and the platform name for native platform service in this ini file. Both OSSs can be utilized from your game. And secondly, for sharing data such as presence and session information, using the integrated platform interface from the EOS SDK can meet the requirement. OSS EOS has supported this interface from version 5.4. So therefore, you simply need to enable platform integration and list the flags you wish to use in the ini file like this. If you want to set multiple flags, you just list these as an array. Although there are some functionalities related to sessions that the EOS SDK has not supported yet, in such cases, you should use the platform's OSS and implement it on the game side to meet the requirement. When using the get subsystem API, you can retrieve the target OSS by specifying the subsystem name, like that. So as I mentioned earlier, the SDK itself now includes functionality to support integration with native platforms. So previously, one of the features of OSS EOS was an OSS called EOS Plus, which supported copying, syncing EOS data with various platform services. However, since EOS SDK now allows integration with native platforms directly, so this feature is planned to be deprecated as an version 5.5. While some games may have already been using this EOS Plus, please use OSS EOS with configuring the integrated platform interface after 5.5 instead of EOS Plus. So next, here are some tips for using OSS EOS. While OSS is very convenient, it does not support all of the functionalities such as easy anti-cheat. And also its fixed implementation might cause the issue in some use cases. For example, it supports the eCom interface's query entitlement method, but cannot call query ownership without modifying plugin itself. In such cases, of course you can modify or extend the plugin yourself, but if you do not have enough resources or skills, you can directly call functions from the EOS SDK on the game side. When using OSS, the SDK initialization is performed within the plugin, so it is not recommended to reinitialize it in the game's code. So as shown in this code, by obtaining OSS EOS and casting it to iOnline subsystem EOS, you can call the get EOS platform handle method to get the EOS SDK's platform handle. If you need to use features not supported by OSS EOS, obtain the handle used within OSS EOS like this and directly call the necessary method from the game. And to call the EOS SDK directory, you need to know the ID of each user. Then, unfortunately, OSS only supports F-unique-net ID format, so you need to convert it to PUID or Epic Account ID format based on your requirements. The easiest way to do this is similar to obtaining EOS platform handle. Cast F-unique-net ID to iUnique-net ID of EOS and call the appropriate functions. If you are using EOS Plus, iUnique-net ID EOS Plus is the right class to cast, and you need to call a slightly different method to get the PUID and Epic Account ID. Okay, so I've been discussing the online subsystem so far, but the current OSS has several areas for improvement, such as lack of blueprint compatibility and complex implementation requirements. Therefore, development of OSS v2 is underway as more refined interface for online functionality groups. OSS v2 is underway as a more refined interface for online functionality groups. OSS v2 is a concept composed of multiple elements, including the actual plugin, providing interfaces, feature samples, documentation, and so on. This time, I will introduce the plugin used in the actual implementation. Online Services plugin is a replacement for Online Subsystem plugin, improving productivity by modern grammar, easy-to-use APIs, and better dev tools for iteration, and so on. It only supports EOS for now, but will expand to more platforms, including consoles. And common user plugin is provided in the same project, in the sample project, LiDAR Starter Game. The LiDAR Starter Game is a shooter game designed to demonstrate the capabilities of UE5. In default, it's working as local network multiplayer game, but configuration files that utilize EOS as its backend is also provided, and you can easily enable cross-platform multiplayer functionality on LiDAR Starter Game. The common user plugin is provided within the project of LiDAR as a plugin, allowing online features to be accessed from blueprints using either Online Subsystem or Online Services plugin. So currently, it focuses on user management and game session management functions, but it will support more functionality in future. All right, so thank you for listening to my so long presentation. This is the last thing I would like to share with you today. So, since its release, EOS has supported various game features, and we will continue to improve and add new functionalities. In particular, we will focus on supporting social features outside of the game, such as parties and presents, as well as developing features for the upcoming mobile store. Additionally, we will continue to provide various updates and information like this. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to the Q&A. So please feel free to ask any questions.